Welcome back to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. The archives and load up some other talks that I've got of these Bob Earll cassettes. I've had them sitting on a hard drive for some time now. I've decided to share them with you all. Let me know what you think. Some people loved Bob. Some people hated Bob. Bob was Bob, but he talked all over the world. I mean, he's from Los Angeles, Beverly Hills area, and did other things. I think he was a writer. Just click down below, like or subscribe, or both, like and subscribe. Just click down below, like and subscribe on my channel. It helps me out. Just a little click for you, doesn't cost you anything, and I'm bringing you some Bob Earll. And have a good day if you want to.
Good evening. I am Bob. I am an alcoholic and a drug addict. Lost a few of you there, I'll bet. You know, one of the things in Alcoholics Anonymous which amuses me is how seriously we take ourselves and then how seriously we take others. It's just, I mean, if you really can ever get to a place where you can look at it from the outside, it's hysterical. It's like a television sitcom, you know. And an outsider would probably view it as that. All anyone can really state here in AA is their own opinion. And that's what I'll do tonight. I will state my opinions about some things. I've been sober over 35 years, so I've learned some things in 35 years. And I probably haven't learned everything I should have learned in 35 years, based on some recent behavior of mine. But anyway. I may give an opinion that will change your skin coloring, depending on your belief system. And what I want you to know is it's just my opinion. And I grew up in a home where there was only one opinion. And that opinion belonged to whoever happened to be the largest human being in the house at the moment. And it was their opinion was the only opinion. So I never had the concept that you and I could both have a different opinion about something and we're both right. That we're both right. That one really was a tough one for me. Either if you're right, then I'm wrong. I mean, there was I didn't get a gray area. It was either or, you know. So I want you to know tonight, I am prone to change my opinions. I may say something tonight that just really fries your ass, you know? I probably will. I usually do that for some reason, don't know why. But the thing you need to know is it's conceivable I could change my opinion on my way back to my room. So if you're going to turn bright red and stay up, you know, till 3 o'clock in the morning, growling and spitting and, you know, just snarling over what I said, I wouldn't put that much energy on it because I may already, you know, have changed my mind and be in bed sleeping, you know, saying, well, that wasn't very smart, you know. All right, let's get down to the basics. Yes, I'm from California. Way, all right. Let's talk after the meeting. These people think they're the only ones who carry guns. Come home with me. Pretty much a typical home for an alcoholic. My father was a practicing alcoholic. My mother was a child beater. My mother was a first-class award-winning child beater. She broke my nose, tore out the corners of my eyes, broke some of my ribs. She did a pretty bad job on me for the first 5.5, 6 years of my life. What changed the only thing that saved me was her concern about what the neighbors thought and that I had to go to school. And I'd already missed so much school my first year, no one would give me a grade. So that was kind of the family that I grew up in. And so that set me up for not being particularly fond of people. Certainly women. And yet I somehow had this thing, you don't hit women, so this anger then was really taken out on men. And in school, I had this attention deficit disorder. I couldn't get it, you know. I was slower than what they were presenting. One of the reasons I was slower is I was under a lot of tension. I mean, when you're getting your brains beat in at home, it creates tension. We know now today that the one common denominator for children raised in an alcoholic home, a drug-addicted home, or a home where there's mental illness is tension. That's the one common denominator through all those homes. And so I grew up never knowing from one day to the next what my home is going to be. I mean, I never know. I can't tell you which part of the house my father's going to be passed out in. I can't bring anybody home from school because he's, you know, could be right inside the door, laying across the hallway. And my mother's one of these, he has the flu, you know, and this is all the crazy making stuff you get when you're a kid. Because I'm thinking, well, Jesus, Jerry's dad's got the flu and he's not laying in the hallway, you know, he's in bed, you know, and even looks better than Dad, you know, Dad looks bad here. And Dad was bad. So school was always a nightmare of, you know, somebody trying to put mathematical problems up on the board for me to answer, and I couldn't get to it fast enough. And of course, there was always some overachiever in the class who was, you know, completely insane by this point because I was taking so long. And then they would have to spout off the answer, for which they'd get praise, and I get one more note home about how slow I am. And as I had a high IQ, and the fact I was slow in those days, your slowness was determined to be intentional. So i.e., I was not a troubled child that needed help, I was a bad child. And that was just basically how I was viewed. And it was humiliating and disgraceful and embarrassing, and I just hated school. What changed school for me was I grew up pretty quickly, and I hit 6 feet by the time I hit 13. My relationship with my instructors and myself changed when I hit 6 feet. I no longer felt a need to sit and listen and be humiliated by them in their classroom. I could walk right by their desk, drop all the books in, make some socially unacceptable gesture, and walk out of the room, you know. They couldn't send me to the boys' vice principal's office because he'd already put out a rule I don't want to see him because I'd already put a chair through his window. So, yeah. They had it coming, believe me. I just didn't know that at the time. I would have felt a lot better about it if I had the information I have today. A lot better. So, finally, I get into high school, and it's a tough school. It's a racially divided school, a lot of anger, a lot of hostility. These are early gangs in L.A., a lot of violence, which I was all perfectly comfortable with. Don't make me sound like this is not bad. It was fine with me. I fit in, you know, I liked it. I liked the feeling in the hallways and the danger and the, you know, the eye-catching, like, you know, okay. All that bullshit, you know, oh, God. So they threw me out of this high school, this manual arts, which was bad enough, and they sent me to a high school called Jacob Riis High School. This was a high school in the city of Los Angeles for troubled young men. I don't believe there was an educational credential within the walls of Jacob Riis High School. There were a few guerrillas, a lot of currently employed juvenile police officers, and a lot of retired juvenile police officers. But that was basically the staff at this school. Their job was to keep us off the streets for 7 hours and keep us from killing each other, and then just turn us loose on the city at 3 o'clock. Now, by this time, I'm 15 years of age. I have not had any alcohol or any drugs of any kind. And I'm sent to Jacob Riis High School. To give you a sense of who I am before I drink, I lasted 1 day in Jacob Riis High School. And they asked me to leave. And they called my mother and informed her they did not want me in the Los Angeles city school system. So this is who I was. I was angry. I felt inadequate, inferior. I felt incomplete. I was not comfortable in my body. I don't ever remember being comfortable in my body. And they threw me out of the school. 3 days later, I was sitting on the beach down in Hermosa Beach. And some of the guys in this group had some marijuana and red wine. And they gave me a marijuana cigarette to smoke and some red wine to drink. Now, there shouldn't be one person in this room that I have to tell what happened. You know, the magic happened. For the first time in my life, I was comfortable in my body. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel insecure, incomplete, inadequate. I didn't feel like I had this little rotting pot of sewage inside of me that I had to try to keep hidden from you. I felt good. I liked the beach. The waves were looking good. Girls took on an entirely new significance behind a little marijuana and red wine than they had before that. So there I was. I had found the magic that was going to save my life. And I believe it did. I believe it saved my life as well as the lives of some others. First 3 years were great. I mean, I'm sure there may be people here who feel that that's somehow irresponsible to state from the podium where there's a lot of people under 30 days that it was great, but it was great. First 3 years were really good. I have a tendency, not very little anymore, but for years and years of my life, I got really neurotic about germs. I mean, just really like, it made me nuts. Of course, you know, my first sober panel was in a county hospital, but of course, I mean, you know, where the hell else is God going to put me after all these years of being... But in another way, it was cool because it kept me from using heroin. I tried heroin and I thought, this is good, I like this works. But then I thought, Jesus, you know, they're making it in Mexico. I mean, you know, I don't know, their dog is pissing on it before they bag it, you know, I mean, I don't know, you know. There's like no control, no regulations or anything, you know. And I thought, I can't spend years putting this stuff in my arm. It's just going to make me so crazy that I'll probably just die from neurosis, you know, from. So I just started ripping off pharmaceutical warehouses. It was because, well, they had morphine, you know, which was refrigerated and measured and sterile and had an expiration date, and, you know, I mean, it was like, if you're going to do it, let's do it, you know, as classy as we can, for God's sakes. And when I would take off one of these warehouses, I'd take everything else with me out the door that I could carry. So my home was interesting in that I had this dining room table that was a sea of medication of all different colors. Most of it I didn't know what it was, but I would find out through experimentation. But one of the things I liked about the first 3 years was I could sit down at my table in the morning and I could control my day. And I had complete control over my day. I could tell you exactly who I was going to be when I went out the door. How fast I'd be moving or not moving, whether I'd be moving at all, you know. I mean, I had control, and having that control after suffering so long of these out-of-control emotions and feelings which I had no ability to deal with at all, it was such a joy. I can control my feelings. It was like a gift from God. Of course, I shouldn't have to tell anybody else here what happened. At the end of 3 years, it quit. You know, I got up one day and put in the magic amount, and I felt worse than I did before I started. And so the next 8 years were no more than trying to recapture the moment on the beach with the guys and the bottle of wine and the marijuana cigarette. So I spent 8 miserable, dying years out there in lots of trouble and lots of violence, trying to get back one day. And I think this is a point for a lot of us when the non-alcoholics in our lives look at us and say, well, if it did that to me, I'd quit. You know? And how the hell do you say I'm trying to recapture a day here? You don't get it. I just want that day back one more time. I'll pay any price for that day. And it was to never come back. So I come into Alcoholics Anonymous in 1962, and I'm 26 years of age. And I didn't basically like anything about AA. I'm not one of these that believed I was home. I just, thought, ugh, I couldn't get a sponsor. They'd say, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I'd tell them a little bit about myself, and they'd say, well, I don't think I want to sponsor you. They'd give me, commitments at meetings. I hated the commitments. I was 3 months sober. I had a commitment making coffee at a meeting. I used to think about putting Raid in it. It was like, I just thought, they're ungrateful. They don't care about this coffee. Nobody comes in the kitchen and says, hey, thanks, Bob. Nice coffee, And I want to go out and just scream at them all. Hey, fuck you, It's like, God damn it, do you know how hard I work back here making this coffee? Any idea? No, you don't. So next week's is going to have Raid in it. See, what I didn't understand was once I was physically sober, I was no longer a 26-year-old man. Once I was physically sober, I now have been returned to the 15-year-old who smoked the marijuana and drank the wine and was in great emotional trouble when he did it. So I'm now a 26-year-old young man in AA, but my whole being is this out-of-control, angry, frightened 15-year-old boy. It took me years to get a hold of that one. And it caused me a lot of grief. Because I think if I'd known I was dealing with a 15-year-old who was out of control, I would have maybe handled some of my early sobriety differently, let's say, than I did. AA was tough for me. I'm one of these. I love all these sayings that come up in AA. After I change colors, then I can usually get some humor about them. And one of my very favorites that we've had for a few years now is the one about don't get emotionally involved the first year. I hate to break this to everybody, but it's not written anywhere, Not written anywhere, which leads me to conclude that kind of attitude would only come from someone incapable of having a relationship in the first place. So, I'd like to think of a God who's bigger and more powerful than that. So, there was a lot of witnesses to this story. This is a true story. When I was 3 weeks sober, I was asked to give a 10-minute talk at this meeting. So I did. In the audience was a girl who was 3 months sober, a long timer as far as I was concerned. She came up to me after the meeting, and said, truth, so help me God. And her sponsor had told her that if you hear anything you like at a meeting, take it home. So I'm this out-of-control 15-year-old. Seemed like a good idea to me, She's this tall, beautiful blonde. I said, yeah, fine. Sounds great. We were together for a couple of weeks, and then she had a complete emotional breakdown. Landed in a private psychiatric hospital in Arcadia. I didn't have a sponsor. Didn't know what the hell to do. Here she is, locked up in a serious psychiatric unit. And so I just go every day to the hospital and I take the big book and get well cards. And yes, I now understand taking get well cards to mental patients is sick, but I didn't know it at the time, okay? I meant well. My heart was in the right place. That was just my level of mentality at the time. Get well, So So I'd go every day and take these cards and take the big book, and we'd sit by the swimming pool in this swanky private psychiatric hospital and plan the rest of our lives together with God and AA and the 12 steps. I wasn't shocked by the fact that she had cracked up, because I had always sort of assumed from the first day of sobriety that that's how sober sex was going to be. That you'd meet with a lot of real power and intensity and passion and come together and just go wild, and at the end of a couple of weeks one of you will lose your mind and you know, the other one would be left with the guilt, you know, of which I had plenty, believe me. So anyway, you know, we went home from that hospital, and I would take her to meet. I mean, I made sure we got to a meeting every night for her. That we read the 12 and 12 every night for her. That we read the big book every morning for her. That we got socially involved in AA for her. And we had one of these relationships that we probably separated 6 or 7 times in a year and a half. You know, one of those where all your friends say, if you go back together one more time, we'll never speak to you again. You know. Which, of course, we had to go back together one more time. I mean, that was guaranteed. And then, by some strange set of circumstances, both of us continued to stay sober and did not encounter each other in the area of Los Angeles for 10 years. Didn't see her, and she didn't see me. And after about 10 years, I was out speaking at a Sunday morning meeting in Burbank, California. Big hall, almost as big as this. And I'm like in one corner, and I look across the room, and I see her in the other corner, and we start across this Lano Club like the Clairol ad, you know, just running through the flowers towards each other. And we just wind around each other as to wrap up like a couple of snakes, and we both say the same words at the same moment. Thank you for being part of saving my life. Because now, 10 years sober, both of us knew neither one of us would probably be sober if it hadn't have been for the other one. I needed her. I didn't have enough esteem to take care of me. So I was still dealing with this out-of-control, unworthy, inadequate 15-year-old boy who was uncomfortable in his body. But I could take care of her. I could get her to meetings. I could get her to conferences. I could get her to read the big book. I could get her to read the 20-hour day. So, and she trusted everybody, and I trusted no one. And she made an environment for me that I was able to stay sober, that probably no one else could have made, and I for her. And we're both still sober, you know, so here it is 35 years later. And I would say that being emotionally involved within the first year paid off for us, you know. I'm a big proponent of being emotionally involved the first year, because I think you'll spend more time with your sponsor than... Well, then if you're not, you know, you might talk to your sponsor once or twice a week. If you're emotionally involved, it'll be more like once or twice a day. So go for it. So I'm in AA, I'm trying to stay sober, I'm trying to take commitments, I'm trying to do what my sponsors say, I'm trying to follow directions, I'm trying to get a better attitude, and it's really hard. Like I said, this first panel they gave me was in the Los Angeles County Hospital. And you meet in this room, all the panel members, and they give you a book. And in this book are all the people on a floor that are there directly or indirectly as a result of alcohol. And the doctors there were very cool, because the guy might be in for a broken leg, but they would have red flagged it because they knew he was drunk when he broke his leg. So we got a lot of people to talk to that you wouldn't get in most hospitals, just because these young doctors were very cool. So I go down the first time for my first, whatever, get my book, start off down the hall, find the first room, turn in the door, and here laying in bed is Joe. Now Joe has lived outdoors for 40 years, and he's laying there in bed scratching open sores, right? I'm like, oh God. You know, this is the guy who wouldn't shoot heroin because it was, you know, made out of his control. So I stand far enough back from the bed that, you know, my clothes won't touch the bed and I won't have to get the germs. And I say, hi, I'm Bob. I'm from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm here to, you know, take a few minutes and talk with you. And so he takes his hand and he flips it up out of the bed, you know, and says, hi, I'm Joe. And he's just been digging into these sores. I'm thinking, I don't want to shake hands with this guy. But all I can hear in my ears, my sponsor's voices saying, on any given occasion, you may be the only example of Alcoholics Anonymous a man ever sees. You better be the very best example you know how to be. So I shake Joe's hand. We talk for a while I hold my arm out here like this, away from my body. And when I get out of the room, I'm straight down the hall to the bathroom, the residence bathroom, past the general soap to the surgical soap where I'm scrubbing. And it got so I would wash my hands 30 or 40 times a night. I'd get out and sit in my car and think, I can't touch this wheel. I'm going to have to touch it again in the morning when I'm clean. And I'd rummage around until I find a rag, and I put a rag over my steering wheel and drive. Oh God, it was just exhausting. I want to tell you, there was one night a week that it was exhausting. But at least I had been raised by sponsorship that had taught me, show up. Show up. It was hard to show up for that one. It took everything I had to show up for that one, because it was striking me at the core of my physical discomfort. And I'd rather be shot than shake hands with Joe in his bed in Los Angeles County Hospital. And that's not an idle remark. I absolutely mean it. I'd rather be shot. You know, pick a non-lethal place and pull the trigger. But that wasn't my option. My option was to reach out my hand and help Joe. Yeah. And it was fun sometimes. We had a good time. I remember my best friend and I were talking to this one guy, and he said, well, I don't know why you're here from AA. I mean, there's nothing wrong with me. And we both looked at him. This guy's completely yellow, laying there wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night. And Jim, my buddy, says to him, my God, man, you're yellow. He says, yeah, I know. I fell down and hurt my liver. I looked at Jim, Jim looked at me, and we couldn't come up with anything, you know. I mean, we were out of material, you know. We went and turned him over to a couple of other guys, said, you go talk to him, you know. I got nothing to say to him. He fell down and hurt his liver. One of the problems I had in sobriety was that I kept getting crazier day by day. So while other people were apparently getting well, I was not. Not even close to it. And with each day, I got a little nuttier and a little nuttier and a little nuttier. But the operative word in AA in those days was fine. You were always fine, no matter what. I'm not going to draw attention to myself by saying, look, I'm having a little trouble here, you know. I'm waking up at 3 every morning with a list of people I want to kill. I'm not doing well. There seems to be an immense amount of anger attached to my ignition key. You know, I'm chasing people 100 miles an hour through the streets of Los Angeles because they didn't use their turn signal. You know. If we're lucky, I didn't catch them, and if we're unlucky, we did, and I probably could be found standing in their hood in the middle of an intersection trying to explain the function of the little lever on the left side of the steering wheel. All the time I'm standing in the hood, my sponsors' voices are saying, on any given occasion, you may be the only example of AA. So be the best one you can. So, I mean, you can't be too good when you're standing in somebody's hood. So I would just figure, oh, well, I blew this one. So I have mixed emotions at the same time. I'm guilty as hell because I've done this thing, and I still feel justified because he didn't use his turn signal. You know, and these chases would involve me with my head hanging out the window, and foam. I would be spewing obscenities and foam coming out of my mouth. You know, and at this point, I might even have just finished 3 hours of meditation, and true, 3 hours of meditation, and I'm on my way to the meeting to speak on the 11th step. You know? And so I would just pull in the parking lot outside the meeting and just kind of wipe the foam off, you know, and brush my hair back from the wind and walk in, and the greeter would be there at the door and say, "Hey, Bob, how are you?" I say, "Fine, thanks." Well, why on God's earth would I say that if being honest and disclosing things is supposed to help me? Because no one else was talking about chasing people through the street at 100 miles an hour, and I wasn't going to be the first one. Because I'm always afraid of looking different and having you throw me out. If I show you the real me, you're going to make me go away because that's my history. You know? They did it with me in schools. They did it with me in other institutions. If I let you see who I really was, I was thrown away, basically. So those early years were tough, really tough. Certainly I'm grateful for them, you know. I mean, I've had a hell of an adventure. This has been a 35-year adventure that end all adventures. I had I'm what's called a task-oriented person. And so what that means basically is that I need to be doing something with a time limit on it in order to have self-worth. So it kind of works like this. Like I would say I go to my refrigerator and I open it up and I see there's no milk. And I think, I need to go to the market and get milk. So far I'm okay here. I'm the epitome of mental health to this point. I have a problem. I have identified the solution to the problem. I'm in good shape here so far. You know, I could get an award from a psychiatric hospital up to this point. Now, where it starts to go bad is I'll look at my watch and say, I got to be back by 3. I don't have to be back by 3. I got nothing to do till 6. You know, but now there I am. You know, 80 minutes down the street, bordering, you know, broadside into the parking lot of Vaughn's Markets. Get out, run in, and I've set myself up for complete homicidal rage. Because I have to be home by 3. I am in the 8 items or less cash-only line. Martha is in front of me with 12 goddamn items in her checkbook. And she's ruining my life. And she doesn't even know, because I got to get back by 3. Well, how that translates into a spiritual problem for me is that I must be physically stopped in order to spiritually surrender. I move so fast that if I'm not stopped, I can't surrender. So I have to either be so sick I can't get out of bed, or physically injured and down in order to surrender. I don't know how to do it any other way. Certainly I'm getting better now. But in those days, that's the only way I could let go. Otherwise, I was busy, you know, things to do. By 3, you know. So at about 4 years, I made a huge surrender. I'm in absolute agony, sick, crawling across my living room, and got up and went to work the next day and broke my back in a freak accident. Now, I've always had a lot of difficulties with my mind in sobriety. I don't know about anyone else. It seems not to have a very high regard of me. And as one of my good friends says, it just thinks, all it will do is think stuff that scares me. That's the only thing it does. He says, I'd much rather meditate, because this only thinks stuff that scares me. You know? I thought, wow, that's really true. And it thinks all this stuff that just scares me to death. Oh, God, you know. All of it smoke, pure smoke. You know, no substance to any of it. So I make this major surrender. I mean, screaming at the ceiling of my room that if there is no God, I'm just finished. Go to work, break my back, taken to the hospital. My head is just going nuts, you know, screaming. After the doctors have said you can't stand for long periods of time, you can't lift heavy stuff again. My back is pretty bad from the streets. And they all kind of leave the cubicle, and my mind says to me, which is always there to support me, so last night you surrendered to God. Today you broke your back. Maybe we should surrender again and we can wind up in a wheelchair. And for the first time in my sober life, I decided that maybe my mind was wrong. That I had no idea what this series of events meant. And I was just going to go home, do what was put in front of me to do, and decide that maybe breaking my back in a couple of places was a good thing, not a bad thing. And it was a good thing. It gave me the time necessary to begin a television writing career. And so I get into this career, and I'm very successful at it, and irresponsible with it, because I'm still dealing with a 15-year-old, you know. You start giving a 15-year-old 6 figures a year, and he doesn't have a lot of sense of responsibility. So I had a guy call me once from a leasing company and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Why? I said, I just want you to know you're the only single guy I've got with 4 cars on lease. 1 was mine and 3 were for women. You know, it was like, but what's a 15-year-old going to do with that kind of money? You know, it's better than giving his jacket away, right, on a school campus. Hey, you like this Camaro or a Corvette? All right. So I was given a great gift, but yet I wiped it out because I did not know what to do with it. I didn't have the skills to be responsible with it. I was still secretive. I was still very angry and couldn't tell anybody because no one was talking about this kind of anger, and I didn't want to be the first. Well, eventually, about 8 or 9 years in, it got to the point where the secrecy was so bad, I had to start talking up at meetings. I had to start telling the group, you know what, I'm 8 years sober and crazier in my life. I am on the verge of I don't know what, but it's madness, you know. And people got uncomfortable, and people ignored me, and people would walk out of meetings, and I'd catch a lot of crap after the meeting. Well, not a lot. I'm not one that you give a lot to. And I just was like, God, you know, have some mercy on me. What is this? I didn't understand that all that was happening was my feelings that I had run from all my life were returning. But feelings weren't being talked about in meetings. None of the meetings that I went to did anyone talk about feelings. There was one little group talked about feelings, and they were considered committable. You know, the meeting was like, it was called Architects of Adversity, and people would go to that meeting and come out saying, oh my God, how do they stay sober? And I was one that walked out of that meeting saying the same thing. How do they stay sober? I didn't yet understand they were staying sober for the very reason that they were expressing their true feelings in this meeting instead of how they thought they should appear in order to be a good AA. I had one other small problem going along with the way I was spending money is wives. I seem to be going through them with a real uncomfortable frequency. I wished I'd taken up gambling. It's not near as expensive of a hobby. But if you think about my history, you'd go say automatically, yes, of course. How could he not? I'm the product, I'm a beaten child by a woman. So, although it may not make sense to anyone except another young man who has been beaten by a woman, when a woman is overtly angry with me, I mean, angry, speaking loud, mad, at that moment, I am reduced to a 2.5-year-old boy who's going to get hurt really bad, and no one is going to come help him. So then my job becomes stopping you from being mad at me. So now I got to do everything required to stop you from being mad at me. Give you a credit card, send you shopping, carte blanche, whatever. Bad idea, guys. Do not do that one. Trust me. No one can shop like an emotionally upset woman on the card of the person she's emotionally upset at. I had one girlfriend who took an American Express gold card and slam dunk Rodeo Drive in an afternoon, It's like, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't say, what are you doing? I couldn't say, this is not responsible behavior. I couldn't say a word because she'd get mad. And if she'd get mad, I'd be reduced to this frightened little boy again. And I don't want to go there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to live there. So no one is saying anything to me, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I've been married 7 times. And no, yeah, I'm 6 of them sober. And nobody's saying anything. Would you not say something to someone you'd been going to meetings with for 10 years and they'd been married 5 times? Like, Bob, maybe you should seek outside help. Maybe this home group of yours just doesn't quite have enough information for you. Because this seems to be a troubled area. And it was. I knew it was, God. So, but my solution to that one was just find the right one. I didn't get it. It was about me changing. It was about finding the right one. And then I'll be okay. And I can relax. They'll never get mad at me. And we'll be happy forever. Which is, of course, a lethal relationship. Well, by the time I was 17 years clean and sober, I had written 32 inventories. I was a recognized AA guru, a spiritual one, yet. I was completely mad. I was making a great deal of money in the business I was in, living in a penthouse at the beach, and right in the process of divorcing a beautiful, gorgeous wife, and I had a beautiful young girl living with me. I could have been a couple of expensive cars in the garage. I could have been a poster child for AA. Look at this boy. Came in here living in a doorway. And this is what he's gotten in AA. Money, cars, women, penthouse, success, recognition. This is AA at work, The only problem was I was still nuts. And worse than nuts, every morning I would wake up, all I wanted to do was die. I didn't want to kill myself. That was not an option for me. There's 3 things I will not do. I will not drink, I will not use, and I will not kill myself. That's just my mantra. I had to remove it from possibilities because it became too entertaining. Well, you know, if it isn't better by lunch, I'll kill myself. You know, I mean, it got too much of a bad place for me, and I had to eliminate it as a possibility from my life. So, waking up every morning, 17 years clean and sober and wanting to die, I looked around AA and I looked around the people that I knew, and I could not think of one human being I could talk to. So I went out and found a therapist. Now, I had fired 2 of the guys I sponsored for going to therapists. You know, I did that typical thing that I do, which is so stupid, which is tell them what they already knew, you know. Well, obviously, AA and I aren't enough. Well, they already know that. You know, they've gone and added a therapist to their recovery. God, I just hate when I get that stupid, you know, but it's embarrassing. So I go see this therapist. I go see this woman. I figured with my track record, I need a woman, you know. And then if I get in with a guy, it's just going to be some bullshit macho, you know, psychological battle for an hour every day on my money, you know. So I sit down in this woman's office, this little first free get acquainted session. And she says to me, tell me a little bit about yourself. Start with your childhood. And I said, well, when I was 15, I was thrown out of Reese High School. I discovered the wonderful world of drugs and alcohol. I drank, used, smuggled drugs, and committed a lot of robberies for about 11 years. And came into AA at 26 years of age, 17 years ago. And she said, I said, start with your childhood. You weren't born at 15. By this time, I had written 32 inventories. Every one of them began at 15. But what I know now about adult children and other folks is we will be drawn to people who are of like experience. So the sponsors I had picked, none of them could remember back past 15 either. So they thought there was nothing unusual. We all just thought, you can't remember that part. It's just standard, you know, stuff. It just goes away. So when I said that I couldn't remember, she said, you know, so I said, start with your childhood. And I said, well, I can't remember any of it. And she got this very strange smile. And by now I'm more than a little cynical, as you can imagine, about in life and a few other things. And so I look at this smile and I think, yeah, right. You know, the minute I leave here, she's going to call her goddamn Rolls-Royce dealer and tell him she'll take the one with the full leather interior. Because she's got this guy who's going to pay for it, you know. We had already set me up for 3 days a week, or 4, starting off. What I didn't understand about the smile was she was trying to tell me with the smile that if I had the courage to stick out this process with her, she'd be in the room when I met the man I am as opposed to the man that I have believed myself to be my whole life. And I'm delighted to report that happened. You know, it took a few years, a few very painful years, a lot of crying, you know, crawling on the carpet like a little boy, screaming, hardest thing for me to do, make noise. I got beaten so badly when I was a kid for making any noise, any kind. But this woman and I stuck it out, and it changed my life. I've been gone from, you know, mainstream AA for about, for the most part, 10 and 11 years. And I got back into it a couple years ago. And I knew that there had been ACA and CODA and all kinds of stuff going on. So when I moved back to Southern California, I'm thinking, oh, this has got to be so much fun. You know, my God, how far can they have taken these things by now? You know, this has got to really be exciting. Alternative methods of recovery that will really help you stay sober. And I get back to Los Angeles and I discovered that all of our literature has been reduced to 164 pages. Which really amuses me. I mean, it really amuses me that anyone has the arrogance to dismiss the experience of the alcoholics that have gone on and written since the beginning. I mean, to have that arrogance is beyond my capacity. So, in case there are a few of you who, believe that all we need to know. Now, I love this book. Sometimes I don't make this clear. I love this book, but it was written 50-some years ago. Okay? Get it? If I'm going for surgery tomorrow, okay, I want my doctor to have read something more current on the procedure he's going to perform on me than the textbook from 55 years ago. Now, I want him to have read the textbook. Most assuredly, I want him to have read the textbook, but I also want him to have read the latest information available about my specific recovery needs. On page 133, in case you've never read this, and for those who have difficulty with math, 133 falls within the first sacred 164. Well, there's so much heat going on. I'd rather belong to an inclusive AA that includes rather than excludes people. I've heard people get up to the podium stage and say, if you're taking Prozac, you're not sober. No one in this fellowship has that right to make that statement. Now, if they want to get up here and say, if I started taking Prozac, I would not consider myself sober, that's cool. That's fine. I'll support them in that. I'll stand bodyguard for them, get them out of the hall with that one, But don't stand up there and say, you're not if you. But this does not mean that we regard human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. I don't even want to guess at what Bill meant by practitioners of various kinds. If we remember that he and Arthur Ford, the psychic, were good friends before Arthur got sober, and Bill was sober and Arthur wasn't, that Bill and Dr. Bob used to play the Ouija board after the meetings every night, I have no idea what he means by practitioners of various kinds. You can use your imagination. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. A word about sex relations. This is 134. Alcohol is so sexually stimulating. I have no idea who wrote that. Okay, I'm not responsible for that one. That is not my shared experience with alcohol. Now, let me shoot about 7 cc's of methamphetamine, and we can change that, but otherwise, there's nothing happening. Alcohol is so sexually stimulating to some men that they have overindulged. Couples are occasionally dismayed to find that when drinking is stopped, the man tends to be impotent. Unless the reason is understood, there may be an emotional upset. Some of us had this experience only to enjoy in a few months a finer intimacy than ever. There should be no hesitancy in consulting a doctor or psychologist if the condition persists. We do not know of many cases where this difficulty lasted long. Now, for those of you who are really locked into the first 164 pages, this is the first 164 pages. This is our founder saying, if you need extra help, go get it. We urge you to. We insist. Never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. If there's problems in the sex relationships, go get a doctor or a psychologist. They knew, man. They knew. And I'm a big supporter of that. And I'm a big supporter of therapy. And I am a big supporter of many of the new medications. And you know, I know people who are manic depressive who could not get out of bed, literally could not get out of bed, physically could not get out of their bed. And what am I going to say to them? Well, tough. Read step 6. You know, I want to belong to an AA that says, well, let's see if we can find some help for you. You know, because one of the things I really dislike is we have a line in AA with which we throw people away, and that line is, they stopped going to meetings. I'm sorry, guys, that's not an acceptable line. They stopped going to meetings? So this is AA for the strong then. If you're strong enough to stay, you're okay. But if you're too frightened, too scared, too depressed, to somehow chemically unbalanced to stay, then you don't belong here? That there's no place for you? I mean, I don't get that. You know? We should be asking ourselves when somebody goes away, why? Why did they stop going to meetings in my area? What can we do to make a meeting that is more informative, more helpful to these people than what we have if they're going away and drinking instead of just dismissing them, you know? That's just my opinion. It's just, I get like, I get very upset with this separations in AA. I'm like I said earlier, I'm sorry, I want to belong to an organization that's inclusive. Just come in, sit down, we'll find the tools. If you have extra struggles staying sober, we'll find you extra tools. Last year was my 34th AA birthday. I have suffered from attention deficit disorder since I was 2. The place that gave me the most concern is I'm the father of a 9-year-old girl who there's not enough time to tell you how much I love this child. And have from the first day, from when we planned her. I loved her. Unfortunately, her mother and I are no longer together, but our relationship is excellent, and my daughter spends a great deal of time with me. One of the things my daughter loves more than anything else in the world is to get letters. And so I get out of my desk, I get the colored markers and the stickers and all this stuff out so I could make a cute letter and send it to her. And a week later, it'll all still be there, sitting there on the desk, undone. And then I'd really knuckle down and force myself to get this letter written. And a week later, it would be sitting on the desk and it would not be mailed. So on my 34th AA birthday, my treat to myself was to drive myself to UCLA, to the clinic that deals with attention deficit disorder, and say, here I am, test me. Well, I went off the chart, you know, so the gift I gave myself was allow myself to follow the advice of these doctors, be accepting of the medication that they give me to treat this attention deficit disorder, and watch my life change in a 6-month period like it was a miracle from God. And I'm one of these people, you know, I don't think that something is a miracle from God and something isn't. I happen to believe that all of these newer medications that don't get you high, that will help people with some chemical or electronic imbalance in their brain, are from God. You know? That's... One daughter story, and I'll quit. I don't know what time I'm supposed to quit here. Needless to say, it's been also difficult for me to have fun. Having fun has not been a real high on the list, you know. Someone who likes to chase people 100 miles an hour through the streets has difficulty with fun as a concept. Of a different concept of what fun is, you know. So when my daughter is born, I mean, it's like, great. It's a new world. I moved into a new world. I can be silly and stupid and crawl through the park with her and, you know, just do all kinds of insane things, get in the garden hose and play in the yard and just build a mud pool and jump in with her and, you know, just just do that stuff. Hard for me, but I can do it, right? So she was in the bath one night. I don't know how old she was, couple years old. However old she was the age where they still are not supposed to be left in a bathtub alone because they could drown. I mean, I read books. This is how I found out. Both Tina and I realized immediately when we were pregnant that neither one of us had a background that had one piece of valuable information on parenting. So that we should get some books quick, because otherwise we'd pass on something we did not want to pass on. So we got a ton of books and we read them all. And I would use the shrunken hand thing to get her out of the tub. You know, when the hand starts to shrink, it's time to get her out of the water. It's it always worked for me, you know. And she always seemed to have had enough time in the tub to be happy. So this one night she's in the tub, and sitting next to me on the sink, on the basin, is this stuffed pink kangaroo. And she indicates to me that she'd like to bathe this stuffed pink kangaroo. Now, I have built a system in me that automatically counts to 10 with her, with everything. So internally, this is my reaction to that. No, 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 no. You cannot bathe the stuffed kangaroo. It's got sawdust in it. The stitches are going to come loose. It'll never dry. The sawdust is going to stink, and you're going to get it all over the house. You can't bathe the kangaroo. So I thank my dear dead departed mother for her input on kangaroo bathing. And I look at my little girl and look at the kangaroo and look at my little girl and look at the kangaroo and look at my little girl and look at the kangaroo. Then who the hell cares? You know? So I give her the kangaroo and a bottle of Johnson's baby shampoo, and within 3 minutes they don't even exist. There's just suds, you know? Her and the kangaroo. So I keep checking her hand, and finally it shrunk, so I say, all right, it's time to get out, you know. We'll rinse the kangaroo off under the faucet and wring him out, and we go down to the laundry room to put him in the dryer to dry. So we put the little kangaroo in the dryer and set it for 40 minutes and start it and walk away. Now my daughter and I are leaving that laundry room with two entirely different sets of energy, because she's been raised with a different set of energy. She's happy, she's excited, she got to bathe the kangaroo, she expects to come back and find the kangaroo pink and fluffy and fun to play with. You know, that's her attitude. She's thrilled. Dad, however, leaves the laundry room knowing that the only way the kangaroo is going to come out of the dryer is with the dustbuster, right? And that belief system is, I was raised with this: if you take a risk, you'll get hurt. If you take a risk, you'll lose money. If you take a risk, you'll be unhappy. So it's like, I learned from my daughter, you just do it. Bathe the damn kangaroo. You know? I am delighted to report, I forget this a lot, people always come up to me and ask me, I am delighted to report that 40 minutes later we went back to the dryer and the kangaroo was pink and fluffy and gorgeous and just fine. So, you know, all I'm doing is sharing with you my experience about who I am, where I've come from, what AA has been like for me, and a few of my opinions about it. You don't have to share my opinion. It's okay. And neither one of us have to be wrong. I respect your opinion. It's okay. You don't have to agree with me. That's just fine. I would just wish you would do the same for me. You know, respect mine. And you don't have to agree with me. And I have friends in AA, and we are diametrically opposed in our beliefs. I mean, like this. And we're still friends. We try to avoid too many discussions about recovery, but we still have a lot of respect for each other and a lot of love, and we do not agree. We do not agree. So I don't know what to say. You know, it's great. it's been a hell of an adventure. I'm looking forward to the next 35 years, you know. No reason why not. I'm in great shape. I take good care of myself. I'm, you know, happy as hell. I've got my daughter now who I see a lot. She keeps me certainly young. You know, I fly her out a lot to be with me. And, I mean, life's all right. You know, I'm taking my goddamn medication. Now that should be enough alone to completely give you enough ammunition to dismiss everything I've said tonight. But I want to tell you, it's changed my life. You know, it's just changed my life. It's stuff they give it to little kids and big adults. It's fun here. I like this conference. I like the energy in it. I had a good time sitting back there while you're doing all your early stuff. So all I guess I can say is if you're someone who feels like you need extra tools, get them. And find yourself a couple of other people who are getting them to be supportive of you, you know? And if you hear someone at a meeting speaking inappropriately, speak up. If somebody says, if you're taking this medication, you're not sober, say, I'm sorry. It's not your call. You know? It's not your call. So have a great rest of a convention, and thank you very much. God bless you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.